pen. So you see what trainers are out there working hard in the middle of the night and which ones aren't. And Mike is always one of those that's always out there riding every single time I've ever been in the pen. So I know he works really hard.
Yes.
So he deserves all of that. Good praise.
And so back to the original question. So if they have a breeding question like what would cross best with this bloodline, I have my own Facebook page that's called AQHA APHA Breeders Experience.
Bring them in on the rail at a jog, please. On the rail at a jog.
My ranch's logo is where the magic is in the mare. And I strongly believe that because if you think about it, a good stud breeds up to 80 to 100 mares a year. So there's lots of babies out of or by that stallion, but the maternal line is what really stamps the difference between, for instance, having just an RL or an RL that actually is golden on both sides of the pedigree. And those are the ones that go on to stand as stallions.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of On the Rail podcast. We have a very special guest today and a very important message that we would like to get out to all of our listeners. So without further ado, I will let her introduce herself and she can just go over where she's from, her experience in the industry, and what she's here to talk about today.
Perfect. My name is Jane Backus, and I'm from Dallas. I've been in the horse industry. I think I got my first horse in 1971 and started breeding in 1984. So I'm one of the older ones in it and had the privilege of learning from the greats, Jerry Wells, David James, all of the older time Brad Kamey breeders. I am very excited actually to be asked to do this because it gets the word out about our Audrey Grace Auction, which I chaired and founded. And we are always trying to expand our audience. And I think this is the absolute perfect way to do it. So I thank y'all for the opportunity to do it. With the horses, I did all the early stuff with the youth and I went to the youth world. And when I stopped, I went to SMU and found out how boring it was to have a life without a horse. So I quickly looked into figuring out a way to do something, and they didn't have an equestrian program back then. So I was working at Willow Bend Polo Club at the time just to kind of make my way through school. And I introduced to their athletic department to bring on a polo team. So I founded their SMU polo team, which today still has the male division, but the female division did drop off. And now, of course, they do have a full equestrian like TCU and all the others have A&M. So I kept going with the horses, even though college tried to take me out of it.
You know you're a diehard when you waver or make it through school and then you still want to get back to it. Because it seems like especially most gals, as teenagers, they'll drop off. If they make it through high school, then for sure when they go to college and then out of college, you have family and careers and all of that. So if you got back into it, yeah, you're for sure. You're stuck.
It is. And I did start having a family really late. And I think that's probably what kept me in it because my best friend that we traveled up and down the road showing in youth, she had kids right out and she's never looked back. I think she shows dogs now. So I didn't start having children till I was 38. So that gave me some time to reestablish myself, get back into the breeding, get back into the showing. So that did help because I do know friends that never did get back into it after they got out of college.
I don't know if they're smart or we're smart. I don't know which ones. Depends on the day, right?
Well, they're probably a lot richer than we are.
They probably travel the world and do stuff like normal people instead of spending all your money going to horse shows and being hot, sweaty, dirty, and tired.
Exactly, and sleeping in rooms that you never thought you would ever walk in, yet alone lay down on the beds in those things.
Yes, absolutely. So I know you're showing this year, or you have horses showing this year at least. So
I have horses showing. I haven't actually shown in 10 years. I have a little, I say little boy, he's 17. He's a senior at St. Mark's. So for the last 10, I've really focused on him and bred and, raise probably 10 babies a year and promote probably 2 out of the 10 I keep for myself and I send them down the road and things, but I haven't actually shown myself in 10. The one that's out there right now is a junior stallion named Ghost Machine, named Cleve, and he does have a cute little background for his name. His dam is an own daughter of R.L. Bestesudden and out of the great mare Zippo Zamblinese, which is a 4-time world champion. And then, of course, her mother was Amblinese, which is also a world champion. So wonderful bred. Well, Cleve was riding her one day and wasn't getting along. And he called me up because if you can come over and get this mare right now, she's yours. So I did. And she has been a jackpot of a broodmare every year. The lowest baby I've ever sold was 20,000 out of her. And he and I laugh about it all the time that if that day had gone differently, it wouldn't have come out that way. So I did name this baby Cleve, and he is a double registered 3-year-old bay stallion, own son of Good Machine. I'm excited because he's 7-panel negative, and today that's getting more and more important. And with all of our breeding and so many mares having G-bed or so many mares doing Herda or something, it's nice to have one because my last 2 stallions carried one recessive gene disorder, but this one is totally clean. And he was with Aaron Moses for his first year. And Aaron told me his forte was going to be in trail and Western riding. So we made the decision to move him over to Eric Felt. And he specializes, he's from California originally, and he moved to Texas, and they have the old Pete Kyle Ranch. And he started putting him over poles, and I've never really done trail. I've raised several world champions in it, but I didn't ride them. They just went on in their careers to do it. So I know a little bit about it. And when I watched this horse with his ears up and how he lifted his feet and he was very careful where he placed them, I kind of saw what Aaron had told me that that's going to be his niche. So we have him entered in the versatility class at the World Show next week, where they show in halter and they show in Western pleasure, and then they do a pattern class that has some poles they go over, and then they have to do, I think it's 4 lead changes, a turnaround, and a backup. So we're excited.
yeah, I think he's strong in all of those. I've seen him this year. And actually, I remember you posting him when he was born because I'm like, a Good Machine is probably my all-time favorite stallion. Outside, I'm a paint girl, so Zippo Sensation is probably near and dear to my heart the most. But other than that, a Good Machine is one of my favorites. And I saw him and his white face, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this thing already. So it's cool to watch him out in the show pen now.
Well, thank you. He was always a favorite, and just that big face, and the fact that he's got a pretty head and all that white, it's kind of neat with his little white eyelashes. So he was always, the one that I was going to keep and try to promote as a stud. I used to show with John Dean. And so I grew up with Good Machine as a show horse, not just as a breeding horse. And then through the years, bred to him every year. In fact, I think I ended up with 18 babies from him through the years. And then Kim Dean, who stands both of my stallions, has been a good friend since 1981. So it was a natural to have her stand him. And the relationship has always been strong. The stud that I lost, Good Machinery, was also by Good Machine. So I love that line, and I've ridden that line. The last horse I actually did show, a moving machine, I rode with Cleve, and we pretty much won everything we ever did go in as a 3-year-old.
Yeah, Good Machine has been a great sire for sure. So since you talked a little bit about a Ghost Machine, and then you have another stud that's the Best Principles. So they're standing with Kim next year, I assume?
They are. She does all of their booking and managing and the fun part, the ordering semen at 2 a.m. and things like that. They're through her. I do take care of all of his advertising and promoting, but I don't do any of the paperwork. And that makes it a lovely combination because, as I've told you, I'm kind of computer challenged in general.
So if anybody has inquiries on either one of your stallions, should they get hold of you? Should they talk to her?
They can talk to both. I'm the one who can tell you the background and the bloodlines. I've got one of those memories that I still can tell you horses that were showing in the 70s and 80s because I used to live by the Quarter Horse Journal and memorize every bloodline ever. And I just am very fascinated. Carol McWhorter is one of my heroes as well. And she has loved my other stallion, the Best Principles, because he's double bred investor, and that really goes back to her roots.
And if I'm not mistaken, both of your stallions are double registered, right?
Yes, yes. And I don't know much about paints, so it has been an eye-opener because they have changed their rules so many times, but I didn't pay attention because I never had one that qualified. So the first one, the Best Principles, comes out, and that was out of my all-time favorite mare, Graceful Principles. I got her as a yearling from Steve Heckman, and we showed her a little bit, and then she had a career-ending injury late in her 2-year-old year. And I had one broodmare at the time, and I thought, well, we'll just put her in the broodmare. And she is hit with every stud that she's done. She's had several AQHA champions. She's produced over 3,200 points. She's got 15 superiors. I think it's up to 28 ROMs. It is just amazing, and world champions in both the trail, the Western riding, and the pleasure. So she was getting old, and we did a embryo flush and got 2 of them that year. And the recent mare laid down on the one that is now named Mama Knows Best. And I sold him breeding sound only to Scott, and they bred a couple mares, and his very first baby was top 5 at the Congress. So they did well with him, and I kept what we barn named him Studley, and did not break him until he was probably May of his 2-year-old year. And I sent him to Rob Foster to do the breakouts, and then he went to Mike Hochtel. And Mike did a fabulous job with this horse. He took him nice and slow. His first show was the Ohio Madness, where he was 4th. And then he came on to the NSBA, and out of a class of 30 in the novice horse, he was 3rd. He was 3rd in the 3-year-old open, and he was 4th in the green pleasure. They're all in huge number classes and horses that have been showing for the full year. So very proud of him. Never out of the points the AQHA shows he's been, and he might be the best minded horse period I've been around, yet alone a stallion.
It's cool. I really like the way Mike presents his horses. They always are very natural and not manufactured looking. So
not at all. He doesn't do that creepy down the rail where the hips out. He just keeps them straight, and they look happy. They're all, doing it naturally. I don't ever believe there's any drugs or any cruelty going on there. It is just all a natural, and that's what I really like.
Right. And I can personally say I'm one of those crazy ammies that's also out riding in the middle of the night at a lot of the big shows. And so you see what trainers are out there working hard in the middle of the night and which ones aren't. And Mike is always one of those that's always out there riding every single time I've ever been in the pen. So I know he works really hard.
Yes.
So he deserves all of that. Good praise.
And so back to the original question. So if they have a breeding question like what would cross best with this bloodline, I have my own Facebook page that's called AQHA APHA Breeders Experience. And way before I got a stud, my ranch's logo is where the magic is in the mare. And I strongly believe that because if you think about it, a good stud breeds up to 80 to 100 mares a year. So there's lots of babies out of or by that stallion, but the maternal line is what really stamps the difference between, for instance, having just an RL or an RL that actually is golden on both sides of the pedigree. And those are the ones that go on to stand as stallions. And so the breeders that actually want to know magic crosses, what's going to help shorten the back, what's going to help her flatten out the front, why the front, is doing that. I'm a strong believer in the top line, and I think both Steve Heckman and Carol McWhorter were big on that with the principal investment lines. If the wither's not higher, you can't elevate enough to get out of the back leg's way, and you're going to start doing knee, and it's just not going to be as pretty of a picture when you have a downhill horse. So I really strive on breeding for wither high animals, and I think both of my studs will have that.
Yeah, I'm a member of your Facebook group, and I always appreciate how willing you are to give your breeding advice, because it's an amount of knowledge and experience that, I don't, nobody's could wish to have at that point. So it's really nice of you to give your insight and advice to everybody. And I always get a kick out of the people. We said this on our last interview of that, just like posts their mare's name or something like, who should I breed her to? And there's no picture, there's no information, there's no nothing. And then you have all these, 10 million stallion owners or whatever. It's just like mine. And I'm like, I don't think that's really what we should be doing. So you're the voice of reason there.
I am so glad you said that, because every year I start the year off by saying, please, everyone, don't just do your favorite horse or what worked for your horse, because that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for this person's horse. Take the horse in consideration, take the person's price range, because, of course, we'd love to breed to machine made on all of our horses, but if someone's got $1,000 or a $1,500 budget, don't suggest that horse. There's so many factors to it, and so many people get hung up of just whoever they've heard about the most, and that doesn't always play true to what's going to cross. And so I do try to steer them in the right direction, but there are those that will just continue. But that group is a private group. It is monitored by Carrie Braddock and myself, and you have to, ask to be put in the group. So it stays a little bit cleaner than some of the groups out there, but you will always get those that kind of go against the rules, so to speak.
Yeah, no, you guys do a great job of that group. I always appreciate the insights from everybody. So for all of us recreational breeders out there.
Well, thank you.
Liz, did you have anything on the breeding side of things?
No, I don't actually. I don't ever foresee myself taking part in the breeding side of the industry. I always like buying those prospects, but it's always intriguing to learn more about that side of our industry and how, all of our horses come to be and what goes into that.
And what I find is not just breeders can benefit from that, because if you get to know the players when you're shopping for your prospect, you'll understand the ones that kind of have the same philosophy as you, or the ones that are just breeding numbers. It kind of introduces you to the background of where your horse is coming from. And that's kind of what I like about it. I did skip over who to contact for breeding contracts. I just realized, poor Kim. If it's a contract question, it would go to Kim Dean, and she has a website called thebreedingbarn.com. Shall we get into the Audrey Grace?
Yeah. So
perfect.
You did mention it in your introduction. So if you just want to give our listeners the, beginning start to your Audrey Grace Benefit Auction and kind of explain what all that is, and we'll go from there.
Perfect. Well, unfortunately, it started with tragedy. Like I said, I was late to the game having children, and my husband and I got pregnant when I was 38, I do believe, and we did not do any of the testing. That test for, you can test all this genetic things, but we didn't. And the Down syndrome test, we didn't do. And I went into labor, and the cord had wrapped around Audrey's neck. And because she was Down syndrome, which we didn't know at the time, it caused death to her. So on October 21st, 2002, I delivered a dead child and was completely distraught and didn't really know which direction to take it in. But I had been working for an organization called New Horizons. And what they are is a treatment center for sexually and physically abused children. The state will rate a child 1 to 5 on how the abuse level is. The 4s and the 5s have got to be removed from their families. The abuse is so bad that it won't just take counseling or things like that. The situations are usually a parent has been killed, a sibling has been killed, they're in jail. It's just horrific stories. And back in 1995, the Don Carter family that used to own the Mavericks had worked with me when I was with the Leukemia Society, and they really liked the way I put on charity events. So they approached me and they said they had found this charity and they loved it, but they didn't know how to fundraise. And could I take them on for 2 years and teach them some things? And then, that's all they had requested. Well, that was in 95, and I still work for them. So one of my best friends, Tracy Johns, when I had lost Audrey, knew this about me, and she got together with Chris Lisi, who used to own PleasureHorse.com, one of my mentors, Dale Parker, and Kathleen Klukas, and they decided they would do a charity auction and make a donation in her name. Well, the very first auction raised $30,000. So being a fundraiser, I thought, well, we could turn tragedy into triumph, and her name would be remembered and helping other children. So, being my ties with the horse world and all the breeding, we kind of got after it, and we've done it now. This will be the 21st year, and it raises typically between $50,000 and $60,000 a year for them. And we actually opened the doors to the Audrey Grace house in 2009. And backing up on that, New Horizons itself was in Goldthwaite, and they take children from all over Texas, but their location, they have 150 acres out there, and they are level 4s and 5 kids only. They have their own accredited charter school there. They have 24-hour treatment teams, psychiatrists, counselors. They have a church out there, non-denominational. It's amazing to go out there and see. We got a indoor arena donated out there, and they use horses for therapy with the children, because many times the children won't even speak to the adults because of the abuse they've suffered. But when they've got a horse partnered with them, it kind of breaks the ice, and they become very best friends with the horse, and they begin to relax and let the therapist in to start the treatment. Well, we had outgrown that facility, and this is about the same time I lost Audrey. So it was a perfect fit, and we moved this treatment center to Abilene. And those funds from the original Audrey Grace, plus my husband was very good friends with T. Boone Pickens, and he was so impressed by our story, he gave $1.8 million to us, and we were able to open the doors in 2009. People often ask me, well, you built the house, why do you continue the charity? And it's a great question. And for people who don't realize how much childcare costs at that, I'd love to run through the numbers. The house itself costs $3,500,000 a year to operate. A child is $280 per day to keep them. And the reason for that is, at this level of abuse, you have to hire people with degrees in psychiatry or at least psychology. Even our kitchen staff has to be specially trained to be around these children. So it's not like a fun camp where you can get someone at $12 an hour. You have to have the most expensive staff, and that's why we're rated number 1 in the whole state of Texas, is because our staff is so good. Our turnout for young adults blending back into society is higher than any other state or independently funded organization.
So does the average child that comes, how long are they at the house or at one of these places?
It really depends on the level they come in at. We accept them as early as 5, and they leave 17 to 18 years old. That's if they stay the whole time. Average is an 18-month stay. We usually can get them turned around. The Audrey Grace is a little different than New Horizons itself was in Goldthwaite, because they will take levels 3, which means they stay at the Audrey Grace house, but we actually have them go to public schools. Then, we get our own bus and we take them back. So evenings, weekends, they are under our full-time care. The house is staffed morning, noon, and night. and they are integrated into society in the fact that they actually do go to public schools there. New Horizons does not. They have the very severe ones, and they do have the school on the premises and everything.
So are they more or less like foster children for their years as minors at that point, all the way up until they get to 18 and then they're let go? Or where do they go if they're not 18 by the time they are done?
They stay with us, or if the parents weren't really, in jail or dead, we also do total therapy programs for the parents. We have a full foster care system, and if they're not allowed to go back to their original parents, we do have a huge foster care program that we can place them in other families.
So it's very wide reaching. Gosh.
Yes, yes. And that's the other part, is we have a whole program that the foster care, and on our website it's has a link to be a foster parent. And we put it through, we have to run all of the records, make sure there's no criminal or anything like that. We do the training for these people and trial, stays. They might go for the day, they might go for the weekend, to make sure it's a fit before we do that. Because if you don't break the cycle of abuse, it goes on to the next generation. So all we would be doing is releasing someone that would eventually have a child and abuse it themselves.
Which I know there's probably more than enough. I shouldn't say more than enough, more than too many children within the state of Texas alone that have needs for this.
Yes, we had to limit it somewhere because it is broad reaching, but it is just a Texas-based foster care plan.
Is your foster care system only for those located in Texas, I'd assume?
That's the sad part, because I started with the Susan Komen Foundation because I was playing polo with Nancy Brinker when her sister Susan Komen died, and she had recruited all of the employees at Willow Bend to help her with the first, what came to be Susan Komen Race for the Cure. It used to be called Weekend Wipe Out Cancer. So I did that, and then I did the Leukemia Society, and then I moved over to New Horizons. Well, the difference is breast cancer is getting more and more of a curable disease. If you catch it early and you do the not therapy, but the chemicals or whatever you need done, you can survive from that. Unfortunately, child abuse is something that probably throughout society will always go on. It's not like you can put enough researchers out there and find a cure. It's just the way people behave. And so there will always be a need for a New Horizons.
I can't imagine the amount of weight you guys have to carry in your hearts on a regular basis. You're doing an incredible amount of work, and which is commendable, but just how hard and heavy that must be from time to time. So
it's hard when I go and talk to the children. The one thing about my particular job is I'm in Dallas and the children are in Abilene and Goldthwaite, but I go out to the ranch. And when you talk to them and see their faces and you think, this could be me, this could be my child, it is gut-wrenching, and it keeps you doing it. I was doing it before I met my husband. I got married in 2001 to him, and he now hosts, through his business contacts, a golf tournament that I put on, and we net $300,000 on that. So through, my connections, we've pulled in the family connection, and he sat as president of the board. Now he's just on the board, but he was president for a couple of years. He got all of his real estate and banking partners involved. And now we do a Christmas toy drive in all the buildings he owns, where people bring toys, and then, we do a big basically a semi truck, and haul the toys over to the two facilities for Christmas. We do a back to school drive where we get, regular notebooks, textbooks, things, and donate them back over to New Horizons. And then the golf tournament is in May, and then the Audrey Grace Auction is in December. So we have several different avenues to it.
So you talked about why you originally teamed up with New Horizons, and the specific reason you went with at-risk youth was just because you wanted your tragedy with Audrey Grace to then be able to support other youth children. Is that kind of the main reason you chose that charity avenue?
Yes, because I had fallen in love with it. Because like I had said, it was supposed to be a 2-year job in 95. And so at the time of her death, I'd already been there 7 years and just really grew fond of the entire cause, the help that it does. And I just really believed in it. And I couldn't imagine just letting Audrey's name just go away. And so now there's a house with her name on it. People know what it is, and she's actually helping others. So that's definitely why I chose that and got it started. When I saw the response we got that very first year, I knew there was something there and we needed to put it in use and use my contacts through the years with the horses. Our lineup of stallions are the very, very top studs in the industry. One Hunt Crimson's been with us since the very beginning. Becky Bailey's a very good friend of mine. The Glover Galleon contacts of the VS horses are in every year, machine made. The Lopin machine, Ken Masterson's been wonderful to us. We've got new studs, the I Styles, the Salt on the Rocks. Then we have the old legends, Only in the Moonlight, just hunting for chocolate, all the good ones. And it's amazing because as a stud owner, you get so many requests to donate breedings. It is overwhelming. And I had no idea until I got a stud. But everybody asks you, and you look at the returns, and that's kind of how you base your decision on, okay, Premier Sires pays a lot. The APHA Breeders' Trust pays a lot. Well, this other one, and I would never put a name out there because that wouldn't be fair. But then there's some, and you think, okay, I'm donating a $1,250 breeding. I'm getting zero back, and there's 3 to 4 people in the class. So at one point, you have to limit what you do. Well, when these people donate to the Audrey Grace, they are getting nothing. They do get a full tax write-off, but they're not getting a futurity program. They're not getting a payback. So they are literally doing it straight from their hearts. And that's a huge impact. When you look at Good, Better, Best, the Hey Good Lookins, all of that, when you look at our list and you see who's on there, those people did it out of just total generosity of their hearts.
Right. It's not a business decision at that point.
No. I was looking at the list while we're talking. Lazy Loper's been in it from the beginning. It's really amazing.
What other items are available in the auction typically? Because I know there's the stallion breeding side, but then you also do items.
There's lots of products. A very good friend of mine is Pete, who owns the Omega lines, and we always get several cases of that. Premier Sires puts in a late full nomination. Deb Moyer always puts Shaps in. InStride has been wonderful to us. The Bortons were a personal friend of mine way before I lost Audrey, and Brad and I used to sit and talk bloodlines every time at the Tom Powers, we'd find each other and sit for hours talking. And when I lost her, Brad was still alive. They were one of the ones when NSBA, when they were publishing that magazine, they put a full storyline in it. They put full page advertising in it. And since they moved over to InStride, even though they don't host the auction, and we'll get into who does, but they do free pages of advertisement. They do a write-up before, they do a write-up after. They've been very good to us. We have every kind of ad designer goes in there. There's Western items, there's horse portraits, commissioned horse portraits, tack. We have a very large variety of items. And we're a very small team. There's 2 ladies that help me on it and myself. So it's really beaten the pavement for about 2 months straight trying to get donations and get it all put together. And then Robin DePlease over at Show Horse Today has been fabulous, and she does the entire write-up and auction page. And when we started, it was on the old forum, and I don't know how many people are still remember Pleasure Horse Forum, but that was the only way we could do it technology-wise. Professional auction services hadn't even started their online auctions. They just didn't have the software. So we did it, that way, and it got really chaotic because people wouldn't follow, increments of 20, and then someone would come in and bid $1 more. And it really was a nightmare, but we made it through. And that was when Chris Lisi owned the site. Well, when Robin bought it, she had a software program very similar to professional auction services where you can put a proxy in, which made it completely doable because so many people would put a bid in and then life is life. You get busy, you forget the closeout day was Sunday, and you didn't go back and you didn't check your bid and you lost it. So with hers, you can put your proxy in early. Say you're bidding on a stud and you want to go up to 1,000. You can put the 1,000 in there. It will not take you to the 1,000 unless someone else continues to bid against you. So you're not having to spend that money. If you put in your bid at 400, which would be the minimum bid, and one other person bids, takes it to 450, it'll put yours at 500, and then you win it at 500 if no one else bids. So it really made it a much more professional auction opposed to when it was on the forum.
I imagine a lot less headache in a way for you trying to control and monitor all of that craziness. I remember when it was on Pleasure Horse Forum, and I think when I either bid on some tails or go horse show ads or something back in the day, I think is what but yeah, it was always chaotic trying to keep track of all of that when it was going on.
And then personal chats would start within it. And that was really frustrating.
I miss the forums when it was like blowing and going like it used to be back in the day. But yeah, not for the auction, probably.
So if people were interested in still donating, are you guys still accepting donations?
We totally are. With the Congress and the World Show being so close this year, it messed my letter system up a little bit. We usually send out the letters because we are old fashioned. We do letters, and then Robin does an email blast, but the letters go out first. And usually there's a good 2, maybe even 3 weeks between the end of Congress and when the World Show started. Well, this year they closed the gap and there was only 1 week. And I didn't really take that into account. I probably should have put my letters out in October. So I am so glad about this podcast because it'll help get the word out. We are up to about 25 stallions at the moment, and we usually get close to 50. And on the items, we're only at 18 at the moment, and we usually get to 50 to 60 of those. So we are definitely still taking them. We would take them up until a minute before we go live on the 5th.
That's good to know. I was going to say, so the start date of the auction is December 5th. So if anybody is wanting to donate anything or willing to donate anything, you can absolutely still submit those items up until December 5th.
Yes, they can either contact me through Facebook straight on my page. They could go to showhorse.com or, private message Robin anyway. Actually, if you probably say, how do I donate on Facebook on your own page, about 5 or 6 people would figure out, oh, talk to Jane, talk to Robin. So yes, we will take them. We have an official form that you fill out. Your item or your breeding is 100% tax deductible. It's a feel-good auction. It comes in December, so you can buy things in the item category as Christmas presents. It's just a great way of paying it forward.
Definitely. Is there a way people can view the items before the auction starts? The items or the breedings available?
Yes. In fact, my next phone call will be to Robin. She was getting that to go live today, where you can't bid, but you can see who's already in it and what items, what the values are. And then she turns on the controls to go live on December 5th. It goes up until December 11th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, where the bids get locked at that point, and then the winning bid gets notified. And you do have until January 15th to pay. I made it that way because with Christmas bills and the cost of breedings, that's kind of a double whammy that time of year. And so you do have till January 15th to pay for your item.
Okay. So by the time this episode comes out, then the availability to view the items and breedings will be live. And then the auction itself goes live on December 5th.
Yes, because we want people to, a lot of people have bought breedings or in the process of buying breedings right now. So we like to let them know that stallion is included. Our auction is different than NSBA or Premier or any of the others. It starts at a third retail value for the studs, well, for the items too, opposed to a half. So if you get lucky, you're actually getting a lower price breeding. And I was the first one who figured out to take shoot fees, and this always bothers me on some auctions. You have to take the shoot fee out of the breeding fee, or the poor person who bought it is paying it twice. And back in 2002, I did the first auction and was the only one who took out shoot fees. To this day, there's some auctions that don't. They just split the price of the stud fee. And then if you bid on it, you have to turn around and pay the stallion owner or stallion station the shoot fee again.
Yeah, something you probably need to be aware of if you're buying these breedings, or should just know what you're getting into.
I could totally do a seminar just on that.
Yeah, because I don't think most people even really think about shoot fees because they're just like, oh, it's all included in the fee. But if you're talking about these type of auction deals, then it really does matter.
Yes, because the money goes there instead of like if you bought it through the stallion station. Yes, it's included, but you went straight to, the consumer and you didn't have a middleman.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Note that, everybody.
Exactly.
On the process of bidding, is there anything people should know, or maybe you could go through the steps of actually bidding in the auction?
Yes, when you go to the site, which is on Show Horse today, if you go to it, you can go ahead and register to bid to have all that taken care of. And there is an option to stay signed in. I highly suggest that, especially to the people that like to wait to the last minute and then do a bid, because if you're not logged in, your bid doesn't register. So it is very important to go ahead and get registered to bid. And that auction site will take you through step by step how to do that. And there is a spot that says stay logged in. I highly suggest that, because at that point, if you go in real quick and you bid and you're doing it at 4:59, if you're not logged in, it won't accept your bid. But it is all spelled out. It's just you have to pay attention to that. The computer will tell you when you look at one of the listings, it'll tell you a description of the item. Like, for instance, I'm going to LL Cool Bay. It tells you the donor, Aaron and Courtney Moses and Kim Dean. It tells you the regular stud fee. And then what I did very clearly is $1,750 less $600 shoot fee. So then the next line, it tells you stud fee then is $1,150. So that's what you're bidding on. You're not bidding on the $1,750. Then it tells you the description. It gives you a click on for his webpage, Kim Dean's webpage, anything you need to know. And then it also will tell you minimum bid, which is 1/3 retail value, bid increments. Now, since we're not on the form, it makes it easy because nobody can cheat on that anymore. It won't accept your bid unless you did it correctly.
$1 bids.
Yes. There's no more of that. It does tell you the bid increments. So the computer itself will do it from there on.
So you said the auction platform is with the Show Horse Today website, and that's Jason and Robin Duplisa, and they have the pleasurehorse.com website, Pleasure Horse Forum, and then the Show Horse Today magazine. Do they just run the platform for the auction? I mean, what are their contributions? Anything you want to talk to them about or talk about them?
That's very important. Most charities, and I learned this from being in charity my whole life, which my parents were puzzled by the fact that I got a double degree and then I work in charity. But that's another story. Most charities, there's a big one in Dallas. It's called Cattle Barons Ball. And for years and years, I went to it. I've even worked on the committee. And then I found their financial statements. Well, it ended up 71% was costs. And so they were only giving the charity 29% of the proceeds. So all these people that are giving lots of money to buy tables, to buy auction items, all this, they needed to be aware of the fact that only 29% of every dollar goes back to the charity. So when we did the Audrey Grace, being that I've been in charity all my life and was taught the bottom line really needs to be on how much actually goes back to the charity. That all reflects on how much is donated. Well, all the items are 100% donated. I don't take any on commission, like, okay, you get the first 500, then everything else over that. There's so many people through the years, and this isn't on the horses, but I've had minks and trips and things donated to the golf auction. And then the person donating goes, you get everything over 1,000. Well, at that point, all you're doing is selling something for someone. And then if you're lucky, you get $200, over the retail. So we get 100% donations. Everyone who works on it is doing it 100% for free. Nobody's being paid a salary. And then Robin completely donates the site. She builds the auction. So 100% of every single dollar raised goes straight to New Horizons. Nothing is taken out for anybody.
Yeah, that's definitely an important point to, for lack of a better word, I guess, point out to people so they know.
It is, because I didn't, the first several years I worked in charity, I didn't realize all that. And then the Carter family sat me down and they're like, you need to find how much per dollar is going to the charity and how much goes to overhead. And that made a big difference of where my family personally donates, because you pay attention to those things and you find out some of the charities you think are a great thing are really not.
Yeah. Money makers for themselves, it sounds like. It's unfortunate.
Yes, very much.
With planning these types of events and the auction, how much work goes into planning these every year?
I start probably October on this particular event, and it's all done, basically on my computer, which I'm challenged, and word of mouth and my contacts through the years. Like, I'll go to a horse show and I'll literally have someone walk up and go, remember, I'm going to put heart stopping in this year. So make sure, you get me down. And so it's networking throughout the year, but the actual work portion, I would say, is October until it starts. The golf tournament takes a little bit more, obviously a larger venue and a lot more pieces because it's an actual tournament. So I have 2 huge events a year, and then the toy drive does itself basically, and so does the back to school. So I'd say about a 2-month period for this one, but through the entire year, networking with your horse friends is key. I'm always scrolling through Facebook and seeing items that I see a lot of hoopla on. Dak always gives us something, Shorty's hats, things like that. I look for items that I see a lot of people liking, and then I'll write it down and then make sure that they're on our list to do a request for.
What are your short-term and long-term goals for both the Audrey Grace auction and then the Audrey Grace house as well?
Being that we did touch upon that, at $280 a day per child, long-term is keep it going. It doesn't go away just because the house was built. We have to keep the quality of our workers up, the psychologist, the psychiatrist, every part of the staff of the house has got to be top end. The state regulates us very, very hard. You can't just open your doors and have a children's facility. They really monitor those. And it's a good thing, because I've known of several that have opened and been shut down by the state because the quality of care was not there. So long term, this is one of those that I explained doesn't go away. There's not going to be a cure for it. There will always be abuse, unfortunately, and you will always need to keep state accredited special education teachers, trained dietitians, the psychiatrists, the psychologists, licensed clinical therapists, social workers, training for the foster cares. All of that will be a fixed cost. It's not going away. So the long term is to keep this alive, find out even more ways to raise money for them. Short term, get more items for the auction starting December 5th.
We hope we can help you with that.
Yes, this is a wonderful opportunity you've given me.
That kind of wraps up the questions I had. If anybody has any questions or inquiries about the auction, how does somebody find you or get a hold of you? Just Facebook, or is there a website, or what's your best recommendation?
The easiest is my Facebook page, just under Jane Backes, Backes. My phone number I did put on my profile. They're welcome to call me. They can go through Robin. They can go through Show Horse Today, or they can generally ask a question, and I would guarantee that somebody will shoot you over to my direction. And then I can send you the letter that explains what the auction's about, and the form that you fill out to describe your item, put the retail value, if there's any shipping cost, everything like that, that I can do the write-up and give over to Robin, who designs it on the webpage.
Very good. And I just wanted to point out myself to make sure people understand that that's not just breeding. That's breedings that are available. There are plenty of items. If you own horses, show horses, or even are looking for Christmas gifts for family and whatnot, there's always a lot of great items in there. So be sure to go on the Show Horse Today website and check out all the items before the auction starts. Even if you are not trying to get into the breeding business this year, I'm sure there's going to be something there that you might be interested in.
Oh, that's a very good point, because there isn't, a lot of my girlfriends from Dallas who don't even have horses. They're like, well, we'd love to help. Well, one of my best friends is a dermatologist. And so I even do a holiday Botox party that the proceeds go to New Horizons. I have figured out there's a way of making money for charity in every avenue of your life. Well, I took some of her best products and I put together facial product gift bags or boxes for Christmas in the auction. We have a house in Montana that we put in there, and it sold for so high that we did a double. I think it sold for $4,100 last year, and the next bid was $4,000. Well, I offered it to the second one as well, and so we sold it twice. So yes, there's definitely things besides that. There's jewelry, things for your home, frames, everything. So you do not have to breed. You don't even need to actually own a horse. There will be things in the auction for everyone.
Awesome. And we will have that linked in our show notes as well. So it's easy access for all of you to get to, scope out all the items and what you would like to bid on starting December 5th.
That's perfect. Y'all are the greatest.
So just to wrap up, the auction does run through Monday, December 5th at 5 p.m. Eastern time.
No, it runs through Monday, December 5th, and it will end Sunday, December 11th at 5 p.m. Eastern time.
So it's about a week long, of course. So you have about a week to look at the auction items.
Yes.
And of course, like Jane said, you can go on and put in your max bid, and the website platform will automatically bid for you to keep you, going up until your max bid. So if you don't want to monitor it, you don't have to. So they've really made that simple for everybody. But yeah, the auction does start December 5th. Yeah, that's all I had. Jane, do you have any last closing thoughts for us?
Open your hearts and your wallets.
'Tis the season for that. And this is a great cause. And yes,
it is.
Yeah. Awesome.
Just remember, children are the ones that are going to put you in your nursing home. So treat them nicely.
Yes. And the ones that are going to run our country one day as well.
That's true.
All righty. Well, thank you for your time today, Jane. We really appreciate it. And we're excited to get this episode out and help share the word and spread the message for the Audrey Grace auction.
Well, thank both you ladies. It was wonderful. And I look forward to getting a lot more traffic our way because of it.
Appreciate you. Take care.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Bye for now.
All right, that'll be your class. Bring them in and line them up.